thing takes a minute. I get a little confused with this. Okay, we should be good to go. Right? Greetings, everyone, free to land and all power to the people. Uh, my name is Zaid Muhammad. I want to welcome everybody to what we're calling Hold the Flag High, a special Black August tribute uh, to observe the centennial of our flag, the red, the black, and the green, to observe the centennial of the first International African Peoples Convention by Marcus Garvey's UNIA, to observe the 50th anniversary of the epic extraction mission of the late Jonathon Jackson. Uh, some background is in order. Malcolm X Commemoration Committee has been together since 1993, initiated by our late chairman, Baba Herman Ferguson. Baba Herman, who was one of not just the pioneer of the New African Independence Movement, who was in the OAAU with Malcolm right on up until that fateful day on February 21st, 1965. And unlike many in the OAAU, Herman actually tried to pick up the work that Malcolm laid out that needed to be done in the aftermath of his death when others retreated. Baba Herman created the Jamaica Queens Rifle and Pistol Club, put together a range that trained a lot of young men and women who would ultimately go into what became the legendary New York chapter of the Black Panther Party, right? And the Big Brotherhood Neighbor Association out in Queens. It was a force to try and bring Black men together as workers and have an impact in their community. And of course, later on, he would be a pioneering founding member of the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. And it was in that work that he became, like many, a very serious target for the FBI COINTELPRO operations, and was framed for conspiring to kill several civil rights organization leaders, Whitney Young being one of them. And instead of facing 20 years in prison, he opted instead to go into exile. And then for 20 years, he lived and worked very hard in Guyana, and helped that young South American country develop both its educational and military infrastructure. He retired a full colonel from the Guyanese Defense Forces. And in the late 1980s, he decided to try and come back to these United States and clear his name. Unfortunately, he was put in prison as soon as he tried to do that. But by the blessings and the grace of our ancestors, he found himself after a few years before Judge Bruce Wright, a judiciary legend in the state of New York. And Bruce looked at the madness and the shortcomings of Baba Herman's case and knowing Herman's history and said, let this man go. This man does not need to be in prison. And at 69 years old, Herman was released from prison. And the first thing he did was pull together some of his comrades from the OAAU and some of us who have been pushing Malcolm's line hard for years, and pulled together what became the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. Right, that was the only draft Akinyele that I ever answered. Right, Baba Herman pulled me in. I was a young organizer. I had something called the Malcolm X Ancestral Memory Project, where I used to bring in scholars and some of Malcolm's comrades to talk about Malcolm. It was around the time that Bill Sales had just dropped his book. It was around the time of the Malcolm X conference speaks in the 90s. Zach Kondo was on the verge of finishing his book. And so all these kind of heads I would bring up. Well, once looking ahead, I'm trying to connect with a special elder by the name of Alice Wyndham, and Akinyele, you'll know who that is, right? She may be the last surviving OAAU member who was in Africa with the founding of the Ghana chapter. We were trying to pin down Ms. Wyndham. We're trying to pin down Obata Shaka, who did the first serious book coming from our community after Malcolm's autobiography dropped, in a forum coming up soon. But just the background, this is background more on us. We came out strong. These were the days when Spike Lee was getting ready to do his thing. And Spike Lee being a commercial artist, we were concerned about a commercial sterilization and distortion of Malcolm's legacy. So we did a lot of serious political education around Malcolm. We were part of a coalition that confronted Spike Lee personally about the seriousness of what he was undertaking, right? And it was during that confrontation, or a consequence of that confrontation, that those of you who were around back in those days will remember that Mr. Lee said he had to get some extra money from some special black donors to clean some things up and to make sure he got it right. And it was around that time we got an anonymous copy of the screenwrite that was supposed to be the film, and it looked nothing like what we ultimately saw. So we were right to put him on blast, and we think we had an impact on what became the final product, even though we believe could have been stronger, right? So those are the beginning days of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. We also at that time chose to expand the annual pilgrimage to Malcolm's gravesite, something that was done and put together by his big sister Ella Little Collins right after he was assassinated. And we give a supreme shout out to Baba James Small, who was a teenager at the time when he was given the post, not just to secure Sister Ella, but to carry out that mandate and make sure that that happened. Brothers, Baba Smalls has been carrying that out faithfully for over 50 years. And he is now one of our elder statespersons amongst our scholars. And we call on him, and he's a valuable resource, and is still active, still very active. And you will see him in and out of these webinars and in and out of everything that we do. Baba James is very special to us, and he's been very special to me. We turned what became a small, intimate annual ceremony into an international event. People started coming from all over the country to participate in that pilgrimage, right? And we continue to do that because it has that kind of substance, it has that kind of character, and it deserves that kind of support. Also, as a human rights organization, as a new African independence organization, we also absolutely take the question of our political prisoners cold serious. Herman had just come out of prison, right? And he knows all of us did political prisoner work prior to the forging of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. So some 26 years ago, we started what became our annual political dinner tribute to the families of our political prisoners, to highlight the support needed for the families of our political prisoners, because people forget the impact. We talk about the impact of losing our political prisoners to our community, but people forget about these are men and women who have families, children, grandchildren, spouses, parents, right? And what does their absence, what does their loss mean for their families? So this became an annual event that was also a fundraiser for their commissaries that on all sides, they all look forward to. So beginning in May, to honor Malcolm's birthday on May 19th, as a consequence of this COVID-19 shutdown and cover that we're facing, we are doing these annual or these monthly webinars dedicated to a political prisoner each month, right? To make up for what we could not do in the actual dinner setting. So today's spotlight will be Russell Maroon Shoatz, right? And his daughter, Theresa Shoatz, who's, his children have been stalwart warrior. These are definitely, warrior children of one of our greatest warriors, right? And in terms of how the state has been handling our political prisoners, Maroon is a true Maroon. He has tried to do what someone in captivity is supposed to do. He has tried to escape several times, right? He never accepted his bondage as our ancestors never accepted their bondage. And he's been treated as one of the most feared of our political prisoners, and we honor him and salute him dearly. And in a moment, we're going to bring Theresa on to tell us about how things are with her father. We know things are not the best. Even though Maroon's birthday, he just observed his 77th birthday on August 23rd. He is a Black August baby, right? He's 77 years old now, been in prison at 49, going into his 50th year, done decades of that time in solitary confinement, and is fighting stage 4 colon cancers. And a lot of our political prisoners have some very serious medical challenges and need support now in ways that they haven't in the past. So I want to acknowledge right away Theresa Shoatz, right? We have a special guest who's with us for the first time, right? And certainly not the last, because we just, Marcus Garvey is so central to what we do in Black August. And this particular Black August, like I said, is spotlighting the centennial of the flag, the centennial of the first international convention in Madison Square Garden. Y'all heard what I said. I said Madison Square Garden. Imagine 25 to 30,000 of our people in the garden, ain't got a damn thing to do with no basketball. I want to make it plain. That's how it was. Doesn't seem like it was 100 years ago, but it was 100 years ago that Mr. Garvey had our people like that, with networks and chapters all over the world. The organizing accomplishment of the UNIA is yet to be matched since those incredible days, no matter how many tools of organizing that we have. So I want to introduce Raymond Dugue, the second Assistant President General of the UNIA, he will bring Brother Raymond on in just a little while. And let us not forget that it was Mr. Garvey who was our first political prisoner, right? And I'll come back to what that means to this particular historical moment, as we are living in a moment where you have a president of the United States telling everybody that he's going to jam the mail up just to sabotage an election. They sent Mr. Garvey to prison for less. Why is this man still sitting in the Oval Office, and why are not people trying to take him out of the Oval Office? You Americans, y'all have to figure that one out. We're also pleased to have Baba Akinyele Umoja, right? One of our elder scholars and organizers from the New African Independence Movement, has given us a legendary a weapon of book value, that is, We Will Shoot Back. See, Black August is constructed to appreciate and support our political prisoners, but it's also to highlight the question of resistance, no matter how minor, no matter how major. And we have major uprisings to celebrate and observe during Black August. We lose George Jackson on the anniversary of Nat Turner launching the most feared uprising in these blood-sucking United States, right? The Haitian Revolution is launched on August 15th. The boy came on in 1791, and that's the one we won. And out of the Haitian Revolution comes not just the first Black state in the Western Hemisphere, but the birth of Pan-Africanism. Mr. Dessalines said any person of African descent, no matter where they were in captivity, if they get to Haiti, they are forever free and a citizen of Haiti. That is the birth of modern Pan-Africanism. And how dare a country like the United States call itself the largest and the first democracy in the Western world, when they had 4 million of our people in captivity, but our ancestors in Haiti got rid of all of that. Now, Haiti is the first true democracy in the Western world. So we have to appreciate our armed tradition. And Jonathon Jackson, with that audacious moment that he had on August 17, 1970, even at only 17 years old, and even though the mission failed, the spirit of those audacious ancestors made themselves felt that day in ways that even this white man ain't gonna let you forget. So we will honor our so Baba Akinyele will historicize our armed tradition in honor of George Jackson's 50th anniversary. And an incredible young sister who I watched literally grow up. We all watched her grow up in this work. And didn't we, Akinyele? And we're very proud to have Monifa Bandele with us today. I started Monifa, my political prisoner work, of course, with Ahmed Obafemi in Synovia Muhammad back in the mid-'80s when I was still in my 20s, if y'all can imagine that. Once upon a time, I was in my 20s. That's where my political prisoner work began, right? But as they returned to the territory, it was Monifa and her crew that came up and really did some stellar work to uphold the tradition of the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And we want to say, I want to make this very plain, that one of the things that's very important to appreciate today about Black August is that the New African Independence Movement has played a very important role in sustaining of Black August over the years, right? When Black August emerges, the Black Panther Party is under heavy fire. right? And after several years, the Black Panther Party, as we knew it then, would no longer be that same Black Panther Party. So it was other community forces who emerged since then that have carried Black August forward. No one has done more to do that than the new African independence movement. Monifa was around when the black the new the Malcolm X grassroots movement came out with that every 28-hour study. Monifa was very much a part of Black August hip hop, and that's something I definitely want her to talk about today. But also, she is our link to what is happening with our young folks on the street today. We need not at all, no matter how much some of you may not understand them, our young folks are in the street. They're raising hell. They're turning it up. They got these white folks scratching their heads and trying to figure out how to get us out of the street. They're nervous as they should be, right? And they're better organized than they are given credit for. And just yesterday, on the anniversary of the lynching of Emmett Till, right? I know it was the anniversary of the March on Washington, but the date was chosen to remember Emmett Till. And most of y'all remember the March on Washington. Forget Emmett Till. That ain't happening on our watch. On the anniversary of a young man, 14 years old, being lynched beyond his recognition by his own mother. Movement for Black Lives had a national convention laying out their agenda for what they're going to do in their coming months. Sister Monifa will turn us on to some of that. We were also expecting Asha Bandele. She got her time mixed up, and I'll take responsibility for that for whatever it's worth, right? But Asha laid out a very important piece in support of Jalil Muntakim. Last month we did Jalil. Jalil is in his 49th year. Jalil was supposed to be released from prison. He was our last Panther prisoner from New York State, but the new first African-American Attorney General for the state of New York, Letitia James, went into court to block his release. She would not have a job like that had it not been for people like Jalil Muntakim. A disgraceful, traitorous, horrific act of betrayal of our struggle. She went and did that. And not only did he get sent back, or wasn't now allowed to be released, let me clarify that, but he was, just as he went back, what happens? He winds up getting touched and made sick by COVID-19 and had to fight for his life. And he's still not all the way back. We almost lost Jalil as a consequence of being confronted with COVID-19 when he should have been out. So we've got a lot of work to do in support of our political prisoners. We have a lot of work to do to change the terrain that we're on politically to deal with people like Letitia James amongst us who betray us in ways that can cost some of us our very lives, right? So that's some background for me, just a short libation statement. I want to just name a few ancestors, right? And we'll go right to work. I want to name the ancestors of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, Herman Ferguson. I want to name Yuri Kuchiyama. I want to name Butch Gladstone. I want to name Gene Reynolds, Stella Elders, who were very committed to this work right up to their very end. I want to name some of the ancestors of the Haitian Revolution. I want to name Boukman Dada. I want to name Queen Mother Cecile, who brought everybody out of those hills to have that epic meeting at Boy Cayman to set it off. I want to name Toussaint. I want to name Dessalines, who carried it forward and laid the foundation for the forging of the Haitian state. Of course, we have to name Jonathon and George Jackson, the original cornerstones of Black August. I want to name Nat Turner again. I want to name those who did not survive the epic Watts Rebellion. I want to name Gabriel Prosser and all of those who were betrayed as he was betrayed on August 30th back in 1800, which just happened to be the day that Fred Hampton was born. So I got to name Fred Hampton. And this is when you look at these numbers. Olombe Brath, had us working and appreciating the significance of dates, times, and places, and appreciating the political motion of our history. I don't think it's an accident that we get someone like Fred of the same day that we lose somebody like Gabriel Prosser. So those ancestors we will name, and we will carry on and begin to go to our work. I hope everyone is all right. Welcome aboard to Hold the Line, special Black August tribute to Russell Maroon Shoatz, right? Let me begin by now bringing Sister Theresa on and let Theresa tell us about the latest with her courageous father. Theresa, the floor is yours.
Peace. Peace, everyone. Thanks for having me. Um, so, right now, where we are with Maroon is, as you said earlier, he has stage 4 cancer and he has a large tumor that's on his colon. And so far to date, he's done about 15 months of chemotherapy. And we thought it was too extreme. The family members, my siblings and I, Sharon and Russell. But my dad, um, he said it's so extreme because I'm going to die. And we kept saying, no, we're going to get through this. You know, I'm calling the director of the chemo center because Maroon had woke up one day. He was at SCI Dallas. And this was back in April, around April 2019. And he couldn't hold down any water and he couldn't eat anything. And he went to the infirmary and they told him that, oh, he's experiencing some flu symptoms. But within 24 hours, he still can't hold down any water. So then a senior doctor came in and they said, what the hell? The doctor said, what the hell are you doing? Here's a senior citizen. He's in his 70s. Something is clearly wrong with him. He said, I want him in an ambulance and taken to the local hospital. This was at SCI Dallas. And he had to go into emergency surgery. And his colon, the way the oncologist explained it to me is that his colon was so twisted up, it was almost like it was wrapped around a pole. And they untwist the colon and they went in and they snipped some areas around where they found a large tumor. After that surgery, something we didn't know, but some of Maroon's siblings suffered the same issue, is that Maroon being in prison, in prison so long, and even as a kid, some of his siblings are allergic to penicillin, but Maroon had never had any issues where he had to go to a doctor when he was a kid. He didn't know he was allergic to penicillin. So after that major surgery, he was given penicillin. He could have died. He had gotten so swollen, his entire body was pink. And it was touch and go. He came through that and he was then transferred to SCI Fayette Prison, where this prison also has their own chemo center, which we didn't want him to go there because we wanted him to stay at SCI Dallas and stay with the local hospital who saved his life, who gave him that emergency surgery. We didn't know what the Department of Pennsylvania Corrections was going to do to him once he landed in their chemo center. And we were really against it, but Maroon, he was so in an uproar about discovering that he had cancer that he just wanted to go every route that they said. And this was unusual because normally Maroon would go against anything that they say in reference to Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, anything in reference to his health. He's always sent out and asked folks, this is what they're diagnosing me with. Can you help me? Look this up, Google it, do what you can and get back to me. But Maroon had changed. And I believe, you know, when there's a saying there's some real issues behind being diagnosed with something like stage 4 cancer. And the 7 steps of accepting it, denying it, being frustrated. Maroon was frustrated with us, his kids. We were trying to tell him everything that we could do, and the routes we would go, and the routes that people like everyone on this panel would do to help support him and bring him home instead of going to the chemo center. We didn't want him to go there. We wanted a campaign to bring him home. But he argued, and I just think he was in denial of having stage 4 and thinking, no, I'm gonna go with what they said. So he ended up at a new prison, a new location, where he ended up enduring 15 months of chemo. And for me, I said, Maroon, after the maybe 3 months of the chemo, I said, Maroon, well, I didn't actually say this to him, but I was telling him in a manner like, they could burn you out with this chemo. And every time I said, Maroon, let me check. And he said, no, leave this alone. Let it go the way it's going. And he started planning a funeral. And he's been planning this funeral. He was planning all the way up to about a month ago. We could not talk to him about fighting to bring you home. So this chemo did something to him. Just the diagnosis of having cancer, it was a new Maroon, to where even I contact the director of the chemo center, and Mrs. Woods, and I wanted to know the lot number, the pharmaceutical company that this chemo that Maroon was taking. I wanted to know everything about it. She said, oh, sure, you can get that, but it doesn't come in till the day of his treatment. She said, we don't have it here. So I told Maroon, I said, Maroon, we're going to get the name. We're going to find out. And he said, no. And right then, Maroon, I hate to say this, but this is the truth. I'm no longer his medical health advocate. He drafted up some papers, and which the papers didn't hurt me. It didn't hurt his treatment because I called anyway. Whether my name was on the health proxy, they know they had to deal with me, and I wasn't going to stop. So it was certain things they wouldn't give me. I'm no longer the health proxy. Maroon has a son by the name of Hassan, who is now his health proxy. But what I'm hearing is that the chemo is low grade. It's not up to par. It may not even be to treat colon cancer. I'm just finding this out. I want to talk to Maroon about it when he's ready to hear it, but that's where we are now. Maroon did 15 months at the chemo center, and right now, well, yesterday, he was transferred back to SCI Dallas. The surgeon who worked on him and saved his life is going to do the surgery to remove this tumor. 15 months of chemo, the tumor did not shrink. Not 1/4 of an inch, not 1 inch. It didn't shrink. So, you know, we need help. You know, like Zayed said earlier, we always have fought for our dad, but it's very overwhelming, and I'm hoping Maroon will let me come back in to fight for him. I'm going to continue to fight for him, but if anything, people think of or strategies around bringing him home. Our governor is Governor Wolf here in Pennsylvania, and he had promised to release almost up to 1,800 people when COVID and when the pandemic hit, and back in March. But but he's released less than 200 people. You know, really the elderly are on the front lines. They're terrified for their lives. This whole thing with the mask in the prison, it came a little short, a little late. Prisoners have died. But now Maroon is supposedly in a well-contained area, although he's in a ward where he's in an infirmary ward with other cancer patients who are dying around him every week. Fortunately, you know, we had that great report that Chucky Africa was released from prison, and him and Daddy were at SCI Dallas together and SCI Fayette Chemo Center. Chucky Africa, when he found out he was going home, he didn't want to wake Maroon up. And he just left Maroon some things and he left. And when my dad woke up, my dad forced him to give him a call so he could have a call. And that's when I told Daddy, yeah, Chucky has been released. We're looking at other issues in reference to Americans are told to have a colonoscopy, you know, when you turn around, when you get to the age of 50. Now, our people are told to get it well before 40 to check your colon. Now, these prisoners, by the numbers, are being diagnosed with colon cancer throughout the prison system in Pennsylvania. There was never, Maroon had never had the test for the colon cancer, neither had Delbert Africa or Chucky Africa. We do know what we thought. Maroon had also suffered with prostate cancer. He didn't get chemo at that time. We believe he did get a treatment, but what he got, we believe that cancer seeped right to his colon. And he wasn't properly checked after this first bout. I don't know if he's going to make it through the surgery. And this is why we need a campaign to bring him home, immediately bring him home before the surgery to remove the cancerous tumor on his colon. I don't want him to go into surgery for it either, but we got to have a pushback. We desperately need your help. You know, we need everyone's help. And we're going to create some type of call-in or rally at the Department of Health, the Pennsylvania Department of Health office, Dr. Levine's office, to demand the release of elderly and terminally ill prisoners like Maroon. So with that being said, I'm open for questions at the end of this, and that's where we are now.
Pennsylvania is a cesspool of the abuse of our people's human rights, particularly in prison. Let us remember that when Mumia was fighting for medication for what do you call it? I'm having a what's the illness that he had?
Hepatitis.
Thank you.
Hepatitis.
The hepatitis C.
Oh yeah.
They did not just deny him the treatment because it was him. They denied him the treatment because they did not want to give the treatment to thousands of the other prisoners who had already been tested for it. Thousands. If that is not genocide, I don't know what is, right? And then you come up also with the issue of the water contamination that was found to be happening throughout the prison system. And then of course you add this unchecked question of colon cancer. Right, I would say several things. One, for all of the valid, our great warrior may very well be depressed, somewhat from just being hit with this, right, and knowing where he is and just how these things kind of play out. So I would suggest that we also need to, as we always do, we always say that folks need to be writing up their freedom fighters. If they don't know where the They just say thank you for your sacrifices, for your courage, right? That may boost their morale and let them know that they are not alone. No matter what the circumstance, how harsh or how bitter, they are not alone. That those who they have been fighting for, some of us are still out there, still fighting for justice for our people, and also still fighting for their release, right? Second, we need to be talking about a medically compassionate release campaign. That's what we're talking about. When you hear Theresa talking about writing the governor, and that governor, that's a Democratic governor for all you Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Wolf. You know what Malcolm taught us about wolves, right? And I'm not being, and I'm not, I'm not being playing with language. Maroon's life is on the line, right? We need a genuine campaign for medically compassionate relief for Maroon and for all prisoners facing his circumstances, and they're quite a number. No, 77 years old, medically challenged. What threat does he pose to society at this stage in his life, or any of them for that matter, right? And you have that kind of power at your disposal to present what we call in public health language preventable deaths, and you do not do it, then that says something about the lack of your humanity, to say the least. So we got some serious work that we need to do for Maroon too. We should also appreciate the Maroon and Kim Holder reminds us that, his comrades refer to him as General Maroon. Right?
That's right.
He's also a great writer and revolutionary thinker in his own right, and has a book of his own writings out called The Implacable Maroon. So we encourage folks to check out his webpage, right, and consider investing in his writings. And if you do that, let him know. We got your book, sir, right? We appreciate your fire and your clarity and your sacrifice. That means a lot to them. That means a lot to them. So we want to thank Theresa, and I want to remind everybody that for tonight, if you want to contribute to the relief effort, the PayPal link is, on our Facebook page, right? And then we will repost Maroon's, she just gave us an update on Maroon's situation. We will repost an update of where he is so you can write him, right? And then when this campaign takes shape, we will update you. You definitely need to be participating in that, right? So this is why we do what we do, y'all, all right? This is a grave human rights question. Maroon has been in prison for 49 going on 50 years. Now, I imagine most of the folks that now follow the work of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee weren't even born, that long ago. Just imagine having a loved one being locked down that long for standing up for our people's freedom and dignity. It's not committing a crime. There's no crime in fighting for our freedom, but for our people's dignity. Let me catch my breath for a minute before I introduce Brother Raymond, right? Because that was a lot. Theresa gave us a lot. We got your back, Wayne. You know that. We've been at this we've been riding together a long time, all right? And
Yes.
that, we just got to step it up, right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And I would encourage people to write as well. Therefore, especially to take Maroon away from this planning of a funeral.
Yeah, that's the pressure.
Every conversation is about this homegoing. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh, I had to catch my breath. That's a lot. Brother Raymond, it's an honor to have you, my good brother. It's an honor to have you. I've been following the work of your chapter of the UNA for quite some time, even though we're just meeting recently. I've been following your work, and your reputation precedes itself. And it's good that we're actually finally able to share in this kind of format and this kind of platform. The work of Mr. Garvey is at the foundation of the breadth of our nationalist and our Pan-African tradition. No doubt about it. Anybody that doesn't claim that needs to go home and do some homework, to say the least, right? So we're glad to have you with us. We appreciate the qualitative value of your chapter's work. Your chapter is a very good chapter, right? I have, I've even trying to figure out, even though I'm strapped with 3 organizations, there's a side of me that wants to take out a membership just as a matter of honor to Mr. Garvey and the long tradition of his work, right? But this year, August 13th, thousands of Garveyites bold, proud, regal, black, and ready to change our world. Said that Mr. Garvey said we needed a flag, and they came up with that red, black, and green and said, yes, this is our flag, right? And the time and place and see, people do not realize that that first international convention wasn't no 2 day, eating white folks hotel conference. That was a month of day-to-day hardcore planning and creating the breadth of an organization that had businesses, that had that incredible newspaper that was the Negro world, that had the steam, all those things that a nation is supposed to have, right? The work, the organizing, the commitment from every corner, wherever our people were in the world, were involved in that. And it was an incredible organizing feat, an incredible organizing time. So our beloved brother Raymond Dugue, the floor is yours to give us some words on the significance and the achievements of Mr. Garvey, all right, and the value and wisdom of Mr. Garvey in this particular historical moment.
Thank you, Brother Zaid. I mean, I'm listening here and I'm so pleased. I mean, you did such a great job that I don't even know what I need to do, but I thank you nonetheless. And sister, my dear sister Shoatz, I send you warm greetings. We met, you may not remember it, in April 2017 in Philadelphia at the UNIA mass meeting.
Good chapter down
we were having the HEC, the High Executive Council meeting. I think Brother Eddie Conway was there.
Yeah.
You were there and another one of your family member, but I remember you well. And I remember what you said. I remember a lot of things, but Sister Pam, not Pam Africa was there, but there was another sister. She had been recently released and she was there. And let me say this, we're here celebrating the month of Mosiah, Black August, but we owe you and a whole bunch of our warriors and their families our eternal gratitude, because you, plural, gave up everything for us. And for that, we are eternally grateful. As Mr. Garvey wrote in Atlanta, all I have given to you. And so our warriors, and this is a good introduction, what are we going to do, Black people? I mean, are we going to just beg, pray, hope for chance that the same people that created this environment, created this reality, are ever going to be just and humane? I mean, we've got 500 years of data that would suggest otherwise. And this is 500 years. And so let me begin with Mr. Garvey. Before I even tell you the month of Mosiah, what happened 100 years ago, when we look at the legacy of Marcus Garvey, we see that Mr. Garvey understood that there is an intimate relationship between the means of production and the character of a people, how the world resonates with you. Meaning, when you produce, when you build, when you create, the whole world will respect you. You will have confidence. But when you beg, when you borrow, when you consume, anyone that's dependent upon another entity, whether it's a nation, whether it's an organization, for its subsistence, for its food, will sooner or later perish. So, Mr. Garvey completely realized that imitating our oppressors would not get us anywhere. It never has, and it never will. That we have to follow, we have to design, create our own African reality. In fact, when Garvey comes along, who in their right mind was standing up, and which Black person was proudly saying, I'm African, that Africa is our homeland, that Africa shall be redeemed? Nobody. Yes, Edward Wilmot Blyden did say that. That is correct. John Edward Bruce, that is correct. Alexander Crummell, that is correct. Martin Delaney, that is correct. Henry Highland Garnett, that is correct. Dr. J. Robert Love, this is correct. There were a lot of what you call nationalists, people that understood that unless we build our own nation, our own reality, we will forever be persecuted, prosecuted, discriminated, exploited, and brutalized. Mr. Garvey is able to put all of that together. And what he realizes is the concept of productivity, where we have to produce, we have to create, build, instead of always consuming, instead of always being dependent. You know, Mr. Garvey said, as big time as the UNIA was, and they had their own Liberty Hall at 120 West 138th Street in Harlem, he said, for all that we've accomplished, if Con Edison today turns off our lighting, we will be in the dark. Meaning, we're going to have to go build it. Mr. Garvey did not bring us to Africa. No. What he did was he brought Africa to us. He made us realize that we are African, that until we look at ourselves as one big race, one African race, that there's no distinction whether you're born in the United States or in Haiti or in Jamaica or any part of the continent. You, as long as you have melanin, you are African, and you have an obligation to the upliftment of this race. So, having said all that, it was exactly 100 years ago this month of August 1920 that Mr. Garvey established or held the very first international convention of the Negro peoples of the world. It started Sunday, August 1st, and it continued until August 31st. Let me say this, until Monday, August 31st. What happened in that convention is a testament to a government in exile. Our people got together, and before he gets there, no, he starts the UNIA in 1914, July 20th, Monday, in Kingston. Its fledgling is doing what he can. It does grow, but he realizes he's got to come to the United States because he had been communicating with Booker T. Washington after having read his work Up from Slavery while he was in England in 1913, working and going to school. He realized he wanted to do something similar to that. So he communicates with Booker T. Washington, decides he's coming to the United States. Booker T. will die in November of 1915. Mr. Garvey doesn't arrive in the United States until March 24th, 1916. Then he proceeds, after several weeks, he proceeds to visit 38 states of the United States. What he sees blows his mind, because you have to understand, he had been born and raised in Jamaica, which was still a colony. Then he had visited Costa Rica, Panama, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Colombia, Honduras, and Peru. What did he see? Black people at the bottom. He said, wow, this is not just a Jamaican thing. This is a universal condition. So then he gets an idea, gets back to Jamaica. This is 1910, 1912. 1912, he goes to Europe. He visits England, Scotland, Wales, Hungary, Germany, France, Spain, and Portugal. And what does he see? Same thing, black people at the bottom. This completely convinced him, you know what? This is a universal condition. And guess what? Since we are exploited, denied rights, since we are discriminated, since we are brutalized on race, so any solution must involve race. And guess what? It must be first. That's the concept of race first. Mr. Garvey's head is ready to blow, but he's running out of funds. That's a real issue. This is a big thing. You know, while he's in England, he does research at the British Museum. And what he learns about pyramids and Africa is, how do you build a pyramid? No, not the technology. That can be explained. But how do you do it? What, people just show up? What? 10, 30, 40,000 people? It took 400,000 skilled Africans to build the Great Pyramid, working 6 days a week for 20 years. The question that Garvey had to ask himself is, how is it done? What about the housing? What about the feeding? What about the transportation? What about the compensation? All of that. Mr. Garvey answers the riddle. Only way to build anything, the only way to build a nation, you must start with a self-reliant, independent economic platform. Bingo. All of the great empires in Africa, we're talking all of Kemet, we're talking Mano Watapa, we're talking Zimbabwe, we're talking Mali, we're talking Ghana, we're talking Songhai. Every one of those all starts with the independent, self-reliant economics. He said, bingo. And this is what puts Mr. Garvey apart from all the others. You'll notice not much of what Garvey says is unique. In fact, his term, one God, one aim, one destiny, this is directly from Dugue Muhammad Ali, who's mentoring him in England. And then when he says the black skin is not a badge of shame, but a glorious symbol of national greatness, that comes from none other Dr. J. Robert Love, who was his first mentor in Kingston. In fact, Mr. Garvey's able to unite our people, he's able to connect with our people. And all he wants is the upliftment of the race. So he gets in the United States, he visits 38 states, and he's blown away. He had never seen Black people so productive, so organized. I mean, you had Black institutions, Black banks, Black railways, Black schools, Black universities, Black medical schools. He said, bingo. He said, I'm not going anywhere. This is the heart of the beast. This is where we build the UNIA. What he's able to do is he gives our people a spine. You know, here's something else that's not mentioned enough. You know, until Garvey comes along, practically every Black leader in America, you had to be a mulatto. You almost had to have white blood and be light skinned. Every one of them. Garvey comes along and says, no, no, no. The black skin is not a badge of shame, Black man. Wake up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. And then Garvey sets out to go do it. How does he do it? He speaks to our people. He gives them the history. Mr. Garvey was a student of history. And the beauty of it is this. He doesn't dwell in it. He says, no, history is great, but let's use it. You know, history can inspire you. You can't live in it. Let's go build. For all things social that man has done, men can do. Garvey sets out, ease overnight. People are believing in it as the UNIA grows, because you know what? Mr. Garvey touches us. Mr. Garvey proves it to us. Of course you can do it. Don't mourn, as all of these labor leaders will tell you. Don't mourn, organize. You're already on the street. You know, look at the bestiality of these people. You know, there's no need to mourn. Organize. He says, I've got an organization for you. And he says, all Africans, as long as you have melanin, you are a member of the UNI. There are only two types of members, those who are active and those who are inactive. So I'm gonna beg everybody, reactivate your membership, join the UNIA. Anyway, what does Mr. Garvey do? May of 1917, he starts the first UNIA chapter/division in Brooklyn, in New York. And he tells our people, guess what? We don't have to accept this. We can make a difference. The organization grows. Mr. Garvey has ideas. A year later, he starts the Negro World newspaper. This is bar none the finest literary work, regular publication we as Africans have ever done since being departed from Africa. And I'll tell you the beauty of this. Watch this. You had the Amsterdam News. You had the Pittsburgh Courier. You had the Crisis. You had the Crusader. You had the Defender. You had, one time, the Emancipator. You had the Guardian. You had the Messenger. You had the Whip. You even had a newspaper called The Opportunity. Garvey comes on and says, cut the bluff, Black man. Call it for what it is. Let's pronounce to the whole world, we are the Negro world. He calls his newspaper the Negro world. In fact, the Harlem Renaissance doesn't happen unless Garvey's there. He was the one that was promoting the arts, the whole concept of your creativity, of going back to Africa, being yourself. Don't depend on others. All of this. And then the genius, the Black Star Line Steamship Corporation. And he says, what? We need to go build businesses. Stop begging for jobs. Create it for yourself. Nobody's coming to our rescue. So he says, anytime there's a need, look at factories, look at businesses, build it yourself. And how do you do it? Pool your resources. That's how everybody's ever done it. So he sets up the Black Star Line Steamship Corporation. They start planning it at the end of 2018, but 1919, they start pushing it. They buy their first ship, the SS Yarmouth, which is going to be renamed the SS Frederick Douglass. They purchased it on June 27th, 1919 for $165,000 cash. If you use a 5% cost of living adjustment, that $165,000 cash, no IU, no mortgage, no loan, in 2016 is worth $18.73 million. That's the type of money Garvey and our people had. What Garvey's able to show our people is, guess what? Individually, we're weak, but collectively, we put our heads together. There's nothing we can't do. And everything has got to be based on race first. Your God has got to look like you. Race first tells you walk the extra mile to go support your business. Go do the extra work, study harder, and learn, not just go to school for the sake of getting a degree or a job. You're going to school to amass the knowledge so you can build our empire, so you can continue our species. When people hear that, nobody had been telling our people this. And then the beauty of it, Garvey kills it off. You know what he says? Black is beautiful. Black is beautiful. You throw away the image and the likeness of the white man's God and listen to liberty, which speaks in our hearts. He got that from Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, who got that from Bookman Dutties in Haiti. Well, it was Saint-Domingue at the time. It wasn't called Haiti until 1804, but you know what I'm getting at. The point is, Garvey uses all of the previous nationalists, the ones who had advocated, guess what? No one's coming to our rescue until we build our own nation, our own government. Nobody will ever respect you, and we'll continue to be brutalized and will never get justice. Now, where must that nation be? The only place where we come from, the 12 million square miles of promised land, Africa. It had to be Africa because number one, it's our ancestral homeland. Number two, we are still the majority there. And number three, it's the natural habitat for Africans. And it produces all the food and it has all the minerals, it has everything. Garvey, when you read the proceedings from the first international convention, I still can't believe how Garvey had convinced our people that number one, we are African. That number two, there's nothing that we cannot do. And number three, let's go build this Pan-African army. Let's go back home and take our homeland back. And you know what? Dr. Tony Martin, the foremost authority on Garvey, you know what he says? Garvey sold the black man to himself. And let me add, and we bought it. Garvey sold it and we bought it. We actually believed it. Guess what? I'm not, the black skin is not a badge of shame. I'm not supposed to be at the bottom. I'm not trash. I'm not what white people say. Guess what? You, cross black man, you can stand up, you mighty race. And people believe that. And then the Negro One newspaper, it had the finest editorial review board ever in our history. You had John Edward Bruce, you had Hubert Harrison, you had T. Thomas Fortune, even, what's his name, J.A. Rogers went through there. Don't forget William Ferris, and don't forget John Edward Bruce, the finest editor outside of Mr. Garvey, of course, that we've ever produced. You had Carter G. Woodson, who wrote for the Negro World. Everybody. What's her name? The sister, Zora Neale Thurston. She was there. Everybody. Overnight, people, the thing is, nothing succeeds like success. All you got to do is succeed one time, and everybody will follow you every time. And here's the thing about the hypocrisy. All those integrationist organizations, they never had money. They got to go beg master. Oh, please, master, give me $1. Oh, please, please, I'll dance for you. Garvey shows our people, you don't need that. You've got your own money. The money that Garvey raised, that was the first ship, the SS Yarmouth. He buys 2 more ships, the SS Shadyside and the SS Kanawa. Those 2 ships plus the renovations that he did, that came out to another 200,000 cash. Garvey had that type of money using the same 5% cost of living adjustment. It's 22.7 million. Between those 3 ships, Garvey's got equivalent to $40 million. And people, I mean, you have to see, as the BOI, the Bureau of Investigation, their initial informants, and then their first 5 paid agents. Let me say this, talking about chumps. The first 3 informants working for the BOI, they didn't even get a W-2. I mean, they couldn't even prove they were getting paid. What are you, stupid? I mean, if you're gonna sell out the race, at least get paper for it. At least James Wormley Jones, he got paper. But what's his name? Herbert Boulin. What's your? The 2 other brothers, I can't recall their names. They didn't even get. Master didn't even give them paper. They were just getting money under the table. At least James Wormley Jones, Amos Otis, Titus. At least they got paper for it. They can say I sold my race out and I got paper for it. But the others didn't even get that. Anyway, so you should see the manuscript, what they write. Where is Garvey getting this money from? I mean, what do you mean, wait? The only place he could have gotten it from us. The master's not going to give it, and we have it, Black people. You realize in 2017, we, not even 45 million people in these United States of America, we spent $1.3 trillion. What does that mean? The Russian Federation, with 146 million people, 3 times. Well, we're not even 45 million. We're actually 43 million, but I'll round it off to make it 45 million. The Russian Federation, with 146 million people, they only produce, and they are the owners of the 2nd largest number of nuclear armaments and weapons. That Russian Federation, the one with the 11 time zones. The US has only got 3 time zones. Russian Federation has 11 time zones. It's huge. They only produce 1.286 trillion. Can you believe this, Black people? We spend more than the Russian Federation makes. Well, that was in 2017. It's different now. But what does that say about us? That means that we are conditioned, we are born, we are birthed to be servants, period. And no African on the planet escapes this. This is why Garvey comes along and says, there's a different paradigm. We can liberate the whole race. I mean, put yourself in Garvey's position. We're talking 1914. Only 3 places on the planet that Black people are so-called independent. Haiti, where I was born and raised, Liberia, which was a US colony, ACS, colonized it, and the only place that's never been touched, well, of course, Italy invaded it a couple times, is Ethiopia. And Garvey looks at the map, he knew his history, and he says, we can do it. Really? Garvey says, we can do it. And Garvey sets about to do it. All he ever did, all he ever cared for was to uplift this beautiful, noble race. Everything was there to uplift and make you stand proud, have a backbone, look at your enemy and say, let's go for it. And how do you start? Well, knowing yourself would help, knowing your culture would help, but the starting point must be that independent, self-reliant economic platform. And then let me say this, while Garvey was building his empire here in the United States, Garvey understood anytime they wanted to take him out, they could. Look what happened in Tulsa, anytime. So you need a base. You need a place that's independent and safe. And guess what? As you build that base, you can send your people anywhere because they're protected and defended. Now, last time I checked, I've never heard of a Chinese teenager in New York City being shot in the back by a cop. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of a Korean teenager or an East Indian teenager. It could be, but I've never seen or read it. Why is that? Because everybody knows those people are from those countries. And those countries are quote unquote real countries. They're not what you call Uncle Tom Sambo countries. Black people, the same way that Garvey made this 100 years ago, of course it can be done. You gotta have confidence in yourself. Garvey says, with confidence, you have won even before the race has started. Without confidence, you lose twice in the race of life. And how do you build your confidence? Believe in yourself, know your history, know what you come from. Garvey sells Black people to themselves. They can't believe it overnight. And then get this, look at the buildings. So Garvey buys the ship. The ships are for three reasons, not only for transportation and traveling, but for commerce and industry. I mean, this is how you build an empire. But guess what? If you have ships for commerce and industry, well, you gotta have materials and supplies to commerce and to be involved in industry. So you gotta go build factories. That's the next step, the Negro Factories Corporation. This is sequential, logical nationhood. And then listen to what he does. He has the African Legion, that's the military arm. He's got the African Motor Corps, that's the military female arm. He's got the Black Cross nurses. He's got civil service. He's got regiments. All of this for the continental nation. And that nation would have to be on the continent. And Garvey's vision, and now you need to go to Africa. There are only two places in Africa you could go. Ethiopia, East Africa, or Liberia, West Africa. Well, here in this hemisphere, West Africa is closer. Plus, they speak English there. Plus, the reason why Liberia was created was a haven for Black men and women that were formerly enslaved in America. So he says, let's go do it. The plan was there, the vision was there. Once you build your home base, and you know why we need to build a home base? Let's just say we have our nation, our United States of Africa, and our warriors are being held in their penitentiaries. What do you think happens? Pick up a phone and say, I've got some of your guys, you've got some of my guys. Let's make a trade. That's not gonna happen tomorrow, but we can't lose sight of that. If, I sincerely wish I could wave my hand and all of our political prisoners could come home. But that's not happening. It's never going to happen. That's fantasy, fiction. What can happen is, don't mourn, organize, let's build it. This is why on 100th anniversary of what Mr. Garvey did, 12 million members, the world's greatest organizer. He understands the concept of a productivity and the character of a people where you cannot beg. He does the Negro World newspaper. And then finally, Article 39 of the Declaration of the Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World. Article 39, there are 12 complaints and 54 articles. Article 39 states that the colors of this beautiful, noble race shall be the red, the black, and the green. Since 1900, the US, there was a song in the US called Every Race Has a Flag But the Coon. When Garvey finds out about it, he says, I'm going to give you a flag, but not just paper or not just cloth. No, he builds the organization, builds the economics, has a newspaper, has the network. In fact, the Negro World newspaper was all over the planet, all over. And at one point, it was banned because the British Empire thought it was seditious, that it was controversial, that it was leading to riots. In a lot of places, the UNIA meetings were just reading the Negro World newspaper. They had Black history. This is 1918 when he starts it. Black history, what they call the kings, Black history, the queens. Then they had a women page, they had an arts page, they had a scientific page, and then they talked about everything that affected us. This was the mostly held literature on the planet. And then get this, at one point, Guess who was delivering the Negro World newspaper for the UNIA? The Japanese Army. I'm sorry, the Japanese Navy. Because they read it, they said, well, race first. We go for that too. If Europe is for the European, and if Asia is for the Asian, then it must be Africa for the Africans. Those at home and those abroad.
Brother Raymond, you're killing it. You're killing it. I even hate to break in here on you because you're on such a roll and you laid out so much. That is the foundation of every place where we need to be going. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to come back to you, right? Because we have a lot to talk about. I want to get my other presenters on, all right? Because I want us to have some dialogue at the end so we can build on what each other is talking about. I want everybody to appreciate that. We talk about those what they were laying out. That was the first expression of the whole so-called human rights concept, right? And what is Malcolm? You know, Malcolm brings us back to that. Malcolm, who was a child of Garveyites. Let's remember this.
Excuse me,
right?
Brother Zaid, I have to interrupt. If anybody reads the autobiography of Malcolm X,
We got that.
the first 5 pages,
That's right.
every page is Garvey.
Absolutely.
The first paragraph, he mentions Garvey.
Absolutely.
And he mentions how his father,
Absolutely.
during the week he was okay, but on weekends, during the meetings, he said black people, the way they spoke, he said, I thought we were going to be liberated. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
That's all right. That's all right. So yes, I mean, so the roots are deep, the roots are long, and the roots are good, beautiful, and black. And we need to look at them. I want to also appreciate, before I bring Akinyele on, something that he just did a few days ago that also brings together that course that Mr. Garvey took throughout Central and South America and the Caribbean before building the UNIA here in the United States. Malcolm X Grassroots Movement did a powerful webinar on what's happening with our people in those very places right now, right? A new generation of organizers, right? And Akinyele, we need to talk about putting one together that I want to call we're going to make Black Lives Matter everywhere and bring forward these young organizers from these different places together to each other in the spirit of what Chocho Garcia did just last year. You know, now my passport had expired. I couldn't go on that one, right? Somebody was trying to get me there too, you know, and we know who that is, right? But we need to really, you know, use this time. This is also, we're doing these webinars also as a part of our work to contribute to the United Nations recognition of the International Decade of People of African Descent, right? On our way to building a bona fide campaign for reparations, sure. Right? They stole us, they sold us, they owe us. In the meanwhile, we got a lot of work that we got to do to repair ourselves to get ready for this next moment in our history. So Brother Raymond, thank you for that. That was an awesome presentation, thorough as we expected, right? Some of our followers are seeing you for the first time. It will not be for the last time for sure. And stay there because we want to have a dialogue and get back into some of these things that we want to raise, right? But now, the flag, the convention, Mr. Garvey, George and Jonathon Jackson, historicizing our armed resistance tradition, right? Why is that important now? Cracker, a little 17-year-old cracker, came all the way from Illinois. Mm-hmm. He didn't go by himself, he had some help. And went into a crowd of our people and started shooting, and it had help getting out, right? There have been armed expressions in some of these recent protest activities that we can certainly talk about, and we need to talk about them, but we need to understand that the question of defending ourselves is a long, old question, and it has always been there, right? August 8th belongs to Mutulu Shakur, right? 17, 18 years old with the founding of the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa, comes under fire. The legionnaires of the provisional government fire back and give the Detroit police hell. But it was a young Mutulu who comes to the physical rescue of his elders, Herman and Ialua Ferguson. Y'all hear what I'm saying, right? And then he goes on to help develop that Shakur family within the Black Panther Party, right? Goes to China and brings back acupuncture, not just because it's smart and it's different and it's alternative, but we needed to clean our people up from the chemical warfare that was dumped onto our community by our oppressors, because forces like the Nation of Islam would only help Muslims, like we were only oppressed because we were Muslims. Malcolm taught us better than that, right? And then he winds up organizing our people around the same international paradigm of human rights and comes under fire himself. Right. So all of this is a part of the, I want you to see, Brother Rim, the continuum of this as it plays out in the new African independence movement, as it plays out in the increasing activity of the Black nationalist tradition in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and right on to this very moment. So I now bring you a brother who gave us, I mean, if y'all don't have this book, you need to be smacked upside the head, right? Because folks need to know, if they're going to act like that, then we're going to act like this. We will shoot back. Akinyele, Umoja, the floor is yours, sir.
Man, free the land. Thanks for that powerful introduction. Before I start, I just want to salute our ancestors, those particularly you mentioned during this month of August, who really set it off and set the standard for our resistance. I certainly want to salute the ancestors of this organization, the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, particularly Baba Herman and Mama Yuri Kochiyama, both who I consider my teachers. We want to
Yuri was my witness when I became a citizen.
Pardon?
Yuri was my witness when I became a citizen.
Most definitely. I could tell some other stories later, but I don't want to go, man, we'll be talking. Then libations, I always consider, like when I learned libations, it wasn't from the movement, it was brothers and sisters on the street. And they would say to remember the brothers who weren't here. So I want to also honor our political prisoners, our political prisoners of war, our exiles, and particularly paying homage to our General Maroon, Russell Shoatz. And, in his spirit, I want to salute you, his beautiful daughter. I remember meeting you in Atlanta when you came here for the Panther reunion, whenever it was here that year, one of the years it was here. But, just want to salute all you, and particularly you, Comrade Zaid, for continuing this work. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the Honorable Marcus Garvey, and then my sister, my other co-panelists, Monifa Bandele, who is she just in one of the most powerful figures I think I've ever met in my life. I met her when she was a student at Spelman, and she was rocking it then. She was rocking it as a student, and now she has a daughter who's a student at Spelman. So that tells how many years, decades we've known each other. You asked me to speak about Jonathon Jackson. Jonathon Jackson's very important to me. I'll say that in a minute. I want to actually see if I could share my screen and talk a little bit about Jonathon Jackson. I told my students about this week, and I hope some of them are listening, but none of them knew who Jonathon Jackson or George Jackson was. So I want to show them some of these images, because I saw these images when I was a teenager. I'm born in 1954, so August 7th, 1970. It was 3 days before my birthday. I was 15, about to be 16. And then we heard about this rebellion, which came to be known as the Marin County or Marin Courthouse Rebellion, August 7th, 1970. And even prior to that, I was inspired by this book, Soledad Brothers, this brother, George Jackson. I read the book, but I really didn't get the complexity of who George Jackson was. He went to prison for a common robbery of a gas station, $70. And at that time, they gave him an indeterminate sentence, meaning that he had 1 year to life. And remember, he was 18 when he went in. But when he got in, one of the things I would learn later is the prisons during that time in particular, were oftentimes considered universities, because just like Malcolm was politicized when he was in prison, other men and women were politicized when they got in by other prisoners. And George was certainly in that number. And he also became so powerful of a writer that his works were published. And because of his influence inside the prison, he was made a field marshal of the Black Panther Party while in prison, and he organized other men. When you mentioned self-defense, they had to be very conscious of their self-defense, because oftentimes there were not oftentimes, all the times there were white supremacists inside of the penitentiaries, and Black men had to organize themselves to defend themselves. And not only from them, but from the guards. In that context, Black men were being killed, and in retaliation, a white guard was killed. And then George and a brother by the name of Fleeta Drumgo and John Clichette, when they were in Soledad prison, were targeted and accused of the murder of the guard. Lo and behold, there was a campaign to get them out. Here you see this image of Angela Davis, was one of the leading advocates for the freedom of the Soledad brothers. And behind her, you see this teenager, Jonathon Jackson. Jonathon Jackson, though, at one point believed that there had to be drastic action, extreme action, to get his brother out of the penitentiary. And so on August the 7th, 1970, he went into the courtroom with a bag of weapons, and he pulls out his gun and said, "Gentlemen, we're taking over now." He armed some other, he armed some prisoners who were on trial in Maroon County Courthouse, and they took the judge, they took the prosecutor, they took some others hostage, the stenographer hostage. But then they were, and here's the image I saw when I was 16. It really had an impact on me, because seeing this image, I'm thinking, man, this guy's just like a year older than me. And he was serious. You know, he was willing to make that level of a sacrifice at that particular time. And I was thinking, man, if there are young people making sacrifices like that, what do I need to do? What type of commitment do I need to make? And then the following year, I read Blood in My Eye, a book by George Jackson again. And he talked about his brother in the introduction of that book, talked about how he was very knowledgeable, talked about how he was aware of the international situation, talked about, he distinguished what Jonathon Jackson was talking about, as opposed to some other Black power leaders who he didn't consider to be that serious in terms of committing themselves to our people. But Jonathon Jackson actually was one of my inspirations to become more active in the Black liberation struggle. So August 7th, that date was memorialized. Of course, they were basically assassinated by the California prison authorities, and they killed Jonathon Jackson, 3 other of the prisoners. In fact, the white folks who were held hostage were also killed. And 1 Black man survived, a man by the name of Ruchell McGee, who's still incarcerated. From that time, still incarcerated. Ruchell McGee is incarcerated now on one of our prisons of war. We would also say that it was from this that Angela Davis was forced to go underground. She was captured a few months later, and then was eventually acquitted by 1972. And I remember at that time feeling that there was so much support for Angela Davis on the street that if she was convicted, it would have been an uprising in America during that time. And she was not convicted. Black August, from that incident and other incidents in August, was inspired. I mentioned how Black men had to defend themselves, particularly in the California prison system. And from that, you had the Black August Resistance Collective that began to practice Black August in the California penitentiaries. And as those men and their comrades, male and female, on the streets began to celebrate Black August for that incident, and also the assassination of George Jackson in 1971, and the assassination 7 years later of Kakari Gaulden, who was one of the organizers of Black people in the penitentiary. During Black August, they would fast, they would train, they would study, and they would also prepare to fight and struggle, which is why this tradition came to the street. As many of them came to the street, I began to meet some of those brothers who would come to the street. I meet their families, and inspired by that, many of us in California, particularly in the New African Independence Movement, we learned of Black August, and we began to share it with people across the United States. You're going to hear from Monifa later, if not next. And Monifa and her comrades, Lumumba, Asha, who I wanted to see Asha today, several other people in their generation of struggle, I think took Black August to another level. And I really want to hear that story because I think it's an important story. And she'll probably announce the concert, which will happen tomorrow, the online concert, which I'm just blown away because I never made it to New York for any of the concerts, and I never made it to any of their international expressions. And in terms of international expression, I want to shout out our comrade sister Nahanda Biadoon, who was important in taking that concept there. But that's what Black August is about, I should say, and I'm glad, Brother Zaid, you put it in the context of what we just saw happen in Wisconsin with not only with the assassination or the murder of or killing of our brother. Malcolm said we should always be careful with that term. So I remember that, especially since I'm on Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. But the killing of our brother, but also the white vigilante teenager who was able to operate there. It should let us know that we got to get organized. We got to get prepared, particularly with this guy who's in office right now. And to me, it's not necessarily about us putting on uniforms and marching with uniforms and guns. We gotta make sure our churches are safe. We gotta make sure our schools and our children are safe. We gotta make sure that in our churches and mosques or whatever, our elders can pray that they're truly sanctuaries. So wherever it be, I don't think it's going to be a small group of people that's going to do this, but just like these men in the California penitentiary system did at that time, they got prepared for the onslaught that they were dealing with at that time. And we got to get prepared in our neighborhoods. But the main way we got to get prepared, coming from Brother Dugue, what he was just saying, Marcus Garvey said the main weapon we need is what? Organization. We got to get organized. And if we're organized and we're conscious, then we're going to be able to deal with anything. One of the ways we can best fight, you saw the other day, we just saw an inkling when the NBA, those brothers decided they weren't going to play. And the WNBA decided they weren't going to play. Major League Baseball and football went on strike. We got to get organized. When we're organized and conscious, we could do that. We could fight on a variety of levels, and as Malcolm said, by any means necessary. And I'm gonna cut right there because sometime Brother Zay, you knew Brother Dr. Khalid, and I know Monifa knew him too, and he said, if I don't, I shouldn't be long, but I got to be strong. So I hope I was strong for a second, and I just want to pass the mic to my comrades.
Thank you, beloved. Yeah, you loaded us up as always.
I appreciate you. I love you, man.
Right, Black at you too. Love you too, beloved. Right, we gotta follow up on that idea that I want to share with you. We got the folks that in the mix to really make that happen.
Well, I'll work with you on that.
Absolutely.
We need to do more of that engagement.
Absolutely. But Monifa, before I bring you on, I already been told to let you know that your friend Mayor Ras Baraka, who probably hasn't seen you in a while, uh, very much wants the movement for Black Lives to be a part of some of the things he's getting ready to kick off in Newark. So so we got to talk about some other things about what you're doing and what that could mean for what we're trying to do in Newark. All right. So here we are. We're several traditions. I'm several generations in this work, in this conversation. I really appreciate this. And Akinyele and I both can appreciate watching how Monifa and her comrades, how they grew and helped stabilize what became the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And they did take it to another level. They did do some very great things. And that Black August hip hop thing was awesome. Most of us look at the connect between here and Cuba with the hip hop, but it wasn't just there. It was other places too. All those places that the Chokwe Lumumba elders, now ancestors, told us to focus on and whatnot. They did, and they got it done, and it was some great work, and all of them are doing good work to this very day. So Monifa, you just came off of a heavy big day, doing a heavy lift during a heavy time, in your particular role with being the policy director for Movement for Black Lives, but you also are part of the very important part of the history of the New African Independence Movement. So in the time that you have, we want you to share some of both. We want you to let us know, what was going on with that Black August hip hop project. Why was that so important? What did that do? Why was that important for hip hop? Right? I mean, if hip hop is so much a part of the culture of young people, and we're not understanding why that's important to appreciate and trying to organize, and then we're clearly missing something, right? Y'all didn't miss that, right? So we need you to talk about that, but we also need you to talk about what y'all accomplished and what your vision are for what your immediate attacks are going to be on the work, and how those of us who are a little more veteran and a lot more gray can help y'all. All right. So
thank you so much.
Microphone is open to you, my dear little sister. Glad to see you. Glad we finally reconnected.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to connecting on any of the work in Newark, any work that you're doing, because it's always powerful. I was pointing out to my children you in the film Who Killed Malcolm X. And so we had a really good conversation about the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee and all the other things that you're connected to. So it's an honor to be on here. And of course, with Baba AK, who's one of my mentors. It's great to meet Brother Raymond. And so this session is dedicated to Russell Maroon Shoatz. And so I want to talk especially about the role that people like my sister Theresa and all of the many children of the current and former political prisoners played in politicizing us during that time. We always name and shout out our elders. That's what we are trained to do. Of course, Baba Herman Ferguson, Baba Ahmed Obafemi, Chokwe Lumumba, Mama Aminata, Mama Chinganji were key because they were constantly giving us the political education, teaching us and urging us to carry on these traditions, to raise awareness around our Black freedom fighters, especially our political prisoners and our political exiles, and to continue traditions like Black August. But I'm just going to say, since Theresa is on the panel, and I want to say to her directly and to all of the children out there, the real heartbeat of the work, the day-to-day, inspiration were our peers who were fighting to free their parents, to free their moms, to free their dads, to bring their family home. And so there's nothing much you can do and turn away when, you out there, you're socializing. We hang out, went to clubs together, and that was always central to who they were. And so, there was no choice but to join them in this fight. And I want to say especially that Theresa's brother, Russell Shoatz III, who is currently one of the leaders pulling off tomorrow's Black August concert, right alongside Kamel Bell, who's the son of Herman Bell, have been integral to the Black August Hip Hop Project since the year 2000, since 20 years ago. And so that's really key. And one of the ways that I even got introduced to, or closer to working with Baba AK and Baba Ahmed was through my friend Aisha Obafemi, right? So our peers played such a powerful role in watching them fight for their family, watching them fight for their mom, fight for their dad, inspires us to fight for our whole community and for Black people worldwide. So thank you so much, Theresa. So during that time, you know, we were, one of our first trips to Cuba, maybe it was like a second trip, was we went to this World Youth Festival, right? So it was like young people from all around the world, but there were about 800 to 1,000 people from the United States who had gone to the World Youth Festival. This was in defiance of the embargo. It was a travel blockade on Cuba. And while we were there, we had some really deep and intimate conversations with Nahanda Abiodun and Assata Shakur. And I want to say that that changed my life forever, because once I was able to sit face to face with women who had escaped captivity, had freed themselves from captivity, I had to take a look in the mirror and say, you know, there's nothing that we can't do, right? How can we sit with the tremendous amount of, we had more resources, we had, better forms of technology and communication, this global culture, we've got to do something. And so when we met with them and they urged us to really take up the mantle, to uplift political prisoners, to amplify them, to fight for their freedom, we decided that we would use our culture, hip hop. And it was actually Lumumba and Clyde and Kofi, but Lumumba specifically, that came up with the idea to say, hey, let's do a hip hop concert for Black August. And a lot of people loved the idea. Some people didn't love the idea. Some of the elders did not love the idea at all. But we loved them, and they came around, and many people loved it. And because we worked with artists like Common, that's how you got Song for Assata. How do you get Smith and Wesson yelling Mumia, Mumia, Mumia throughout their song in the break? It's because of their participation in Black August. So it was raising awareness for the audiences, but also using the artists to amplify and bring it to another level. And all of us had been impacted when we were little kids, when we heard Chuck D say, supporter of Chesimard, right? People were like, who's that? You had to look it up. So the culture is powerful. That's why we used our culture, Baba Zaid, because we knew how powerful it had been for us. We knew when we went to Cuba, even those of us that didn't come from activist household, my parents were activists, my father was a member of the Black Panther Party, but everybody on the trip knew Assata because Chuck D, supporter of Chesimard, right? So we knew how powerful our culture could be and that we needed to take it to another level. And then we had artists who were dedicated to it. Big shout outs to Dead Prez, big shout outs to Talib Kweli and Mostef. They stuck with it, those four in particular, every single year for like a decade, right? And so you'll see some of them tomorrow. So yesterday we had the Black National Convention. The Black National Convention was a clear nod to the 1972 Black Political Convention that happened in Gary, Indiana. And through the planning of that and pulling up the footage and studying it, someone also made the connection and say, yeah, it's also the 100-year anniversary of the Garvey Convention in 1920. So it was like all of these powerful gatherings of our political minds and for people of different ideologies coming together that we were standing on. And we plan to be in person in Detroit. We were bringing in tens of thousands of Black people from every state in the country, and then COVID hit. And we were able to pivot and pull together what I think was a very powerful virtual experience. People can still check it out on blacknovember.org. One of the clear calls coming out of our Black National Convention is that we have to defund the police. We have to dismantle the militarization that the United States has at home and abroad, and we must abolish prisons. And we know that there's a road to that, that there's increments. And so we support policies that people have that go through that goal, but we stated very clearly that safety for us, safety for our communities does not lie in putting members of our communities in cages. And we also used the convention yesterday to educate a new generation of folks about political prisoners. We had an amazing interview with Baba Sekou Odinga on this national platform where he talked about who he was and why he was a political prisoner. So this is yet another era that's emerging. You know, when we look back on this, there's going to be pre-COVID and post-COVID. There's going to be pre the Black National Convention of 2000 and post the National Black Convention of the Black National Convention of 2000. And we want to make the best of it. This past Juneteenth, the Movement for Black Lives put 700 demonstrations on the ground. There were demonstrations in every state in the country for Juneteenth. And wherever you went, you saw that while people were yelling justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, as well as the victims in those respective cities that had been murdered by the police, there was a national call to dismantle policing. There was a national understanding that policing is a tool of white supremacist control. And that is something that we couldn't have imagined last year or 2 years ago, you know, such a clear political articulation. Back in 2000, the theme for the Black August concert that year was abolish prisons, because a lot of us had just read Angela Davis's Are Prisons Obsolete? We was hanging out with an organization called the Prison Moratorium Project and being mentored by Kai Lumumba and people who are around the beginnings of critical resistance. So we made that the theme and we kind of talked about it at the concert. So to fast forward to today, where people really en masse are making this same call is inspiring. And that's all I want to say. I have another panel in 7 minutes. So I may miss the Q&A, but I just want to go back to the Shoatz family and say that not only do our freedom fighters who are behind the walls make tremendous sacrifices, you know, built such a foundation for us, it's just amazing how their children, with all of they've had to give up, their parents, have their homes raided. You know, you've heard Theresa, you heard Aisha talk about, you know, being raided by the police as a child, having cops show up at their schools, that they're still really able to carry this new current movement is phenomenal. It's got to be in the DNA. Right, there's got to be some ancestral line, like Brother Raymond was talking about, how you wouldn't have had Malcolm X if not for the Garvey stuff, and his father was studied by Garvey, and Garvey was influenced by. I mean, you see these lines. I just want to articulate that we see that today, right now, in our current movement and manifestation, and the fight that Sister Theresa is doing doesn't just impact her father, right? If they win, elders throughout the prison system in Pennsylvania win, right? When we fight for Mumia to get the hepatitis treatment, all of the, you said thousands win. And so I just want to thank her and thank you, Baba Zaid, for dedicating this event to Maroon.
Thank you. That was so on point. You're right, because with the colon cancer diagnosis with Maroon, now they're checking in on elderly prisoners. Daddy said, this is amazing. They're bringing them in every day from throughout the state, although they're not staying, but at least they're bringing prisoners in from Pennsylvania into just to check their colon, which this hadn't happened in so long, and it's only because Maroon has been there for a year.
And
so
you
now
guys were fighting. And I don't know if you remember this, Theresa, but one of our Black August trips was to Brazil, where you and Sharon came. And on that trip, we visited a prison, and we talked to prisoners, and we talked to families, and we had you guys speak about Maroon and your father. And those people there still remember him, remember you, remember the case. Their own family members were incarcerated, and that connection helps to build. There's a big movement in Brazil right now. The Black Lives Matter movement there, and you are part of that.
That's awesome. So yeah, and I thank you, Monifa, because a lot of my education came from traveling. Well, traveling does more for me in education than anything, and it was with the Malcolm X grassroots, MXG, right? Who help assist in us to be able to travel during Black August. But the last thing I want to say is that, yes, we have been fighting for our dad for years. But there was a time I didn't want to fight for him. And it was because you know, I just felt alone. I didn't have my father in my life, and there were a lot of challenges. But it wasn't until I was in my early 20s when I asked my dad, I said, why did you leave us? Why did you do that? And we need supporters. Everyone doesn't even know you. And he said, wait a minute, hold up. He said, I couldn't leave this rotten system for you. Why would I sit back and allow this stuff to go on, the brutality from the cops and the government and everything else that surrounds what's happening to Black people? He said, I could not leave that for you. And that's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was no longer a thought in the back of my head, like, do I want to help him? No, I'm not going to help him because he abandoned our family. But that was a clear explanation of what he had to do. Going underground, being with the Black Liberation Movement, the BLA, he was so on point that I had no other choice but to follow his lead and try to help release him from solitary confinement.
Monifa just had to take her leave because she's got another engagement. They were involved, and somebody can correct me. The link between Cuban hip hop and Afro American hip hop was the best known. She mentioned Brazil. I forgot about Brazil. I know there was a connect with Zimbabwe, and there was one other country. I can't remember which other country it was, but
Venezuela, Tanzania.
Back then.
Yeah, they went to Venezuela. That was one of the last international ones, I believe.
Okay, all right.
And
yeah.
Tanzania, most definitely.
Tanzania. That's what it was.
And South Africa doing the World Conference Against Racism.
Yes.
So, and the thing to say about another thing to add that I don't think Monifa got to add, particularly in Cuba, but in other places too, they connected with the local artists and was able to share not only hip hop culture, but
struggle,
political education, comparing it. And that's one of the reasons that helped Nahanda in helping to build an indigenous form of hip hop amongst the Cubans, and why she's considered the mother of hip hop, and considering that she's not, she's a New African woman, New African from the United States. I think they New Africans in Cuba too, but that's another question. But for that woman to be called the mother of hip hop, who's in exile and is well loved over there, that's another thing, a story we must share even more widely for our people here to recognize the importance she played representing our movement in another country without a lot of resources.
Right.
She was able to do that.
That's right. And I want to add to that because it's important, because I want people to appreciate, one, that Assata's not the only one in exile, right? Pito Needle's in exile.
Right.
We've had several die in exile, just like we lost Nahanda, and they really did love Nahanda. You see that love that she got in Cuba for what an elder doing what an elder's supposed to do, right? An elder that had the benefit not just of our own struggle here, but of the Cuban Revolution embracing her. And let us remember, she didn't come out of the sky. Her father was with Malcolm in the OAU, right? And it's believed that his death may have been related to that relationship. There's some serious questions about the death of her father, right? So that line,
right.
All these lines are very clear, and it's very clear why all these lines are so strong. So we loved Nahanda. We did that memorial. It busted me up. I have a piece for Nahanda that I wrote to honor her. So this all this is Black August. This is one of the reasons why we do this, right? To honor the ancestors that made those sacrifices, right? To honor our organizing tradition, honor our resistance tradition, right? When Assata was liberated, that wasn't no nonviolent negotiation. That wasn't no singing, right? That was an armed mission that took her out of the clutches of Clinton Correctional Facility in this crazy up south state that we call New Jersey, right? It was an armed action, you know, it was an armed network that got Nahanda the hell out of here. You know, I mean, you know, Pete O'Neill didn't walk to Tanzania. Folks helped him. You know, so our underground tradition is a valuable tradition, and it didn't begin and end with the general that was Harriet Tubman. It continues, right? And it's one of the things that we all have an obligation to do. Those of us who understand that, as we engage our people in the street. And I tell our babies all the time, look, y'all got more guns than we ever had. Right? And nobody should be coming into your community like these pigs or these white boys have, with so much liberty, thinking that it's all right. And there have been stories. Now, we must also appreciate that some of them get that. You know, there are armed expressions in Minneapolis that were protecting the community from folks from either side, provocateurs fronting to be with our struggle, to racists trying to, you know, attack us. There were there's an armed formation, there's a gun club, and there's a multiracial gun club too, by the way, in Minneapolis, from what I could tell. You pointed out the brothers started showing up with the arms in Atlanta. When stuff got hot in Atlanta, started to protect our people down there. And then there's this arm, I forget the name of this organization, that they had this large formation that went into Stone Mountain, Georgia, right? But when they went in, pigs backed up, didn't they? The pigs were polite, and they retreated, right? They were not interested in engaging a force of armed Black men and women like that when they didn't have to. They knew there would be casualties on both sides. And we have other expressions of that. I was talking to somebody, I think we were on the air last night, and I mentioned the whole question, the role of the deacons of defense in securing the continuation and the success of the March Against Fear. They did not confine themselves to protecting their churches. When the movement called, those soldiers answered. And it came straight out of our Black church tradition. So there's not a pocket or place in our community that does not have the capacity or the right or the recognition of the right to train for self-defense and to the furthest degree as they can necessarily do that, right? So that's you know, we just want to say that. We don't have that much time left. If any of you want to say anything to each other, right? Think about any final thoughts you may want to share about where we want to go. I don't have the flyer for tomorrow, Akinyele. I need you to send me that real quick, because I want to put that on blast. I wish I had known about it. I would have put in my 2 cents to do something for the concert tomorrow.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. That would have been dope.
Yeah. We did a concert for Cuba last month, right? To Cuba with Love, that came out of some forces from DC, and a bunch of us off, and it was done over 2 days. It was beautiful. So this is good stuff. This is Black August. You know, we're going to celebrate our resistance. We're going to bring these traditions together, and we're going to pass this on to our young. We're going to pass this on, right?
I think I'm going to try to find it and post it, put it up on the screen now.
All right. Okay.
I'm sure.
Okay. And I'll pull it, and I'll have it on blast.
Okay. Share screen. I'm going to get it. Share screen.
I don't even know how to do that. Now,
I'm learning.
Gathering your thoughts, let me just say some things and some places that we're going to go in terms of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. There it is, right? Next month, we're looking to do an appreciation of the 60th anniversary of Malcolm meeting Fidel, right? September 19th, 1960, when Fidel came to Harlem on the invitation of Malcolm, right? That meeting was not just the stuff of legend, it was legendary. And it had a big impact on both of their lives personally and on both of our struggles in a very real way. I mean, in terms of this particular epic, this particular period that we live in, no country has done more for the liberation of the of the African continent than the Cuban people. The military expression of Back to Africa, who did that? Cuban Revolution. I'm talking about Angola and Southern Africa, right? Putting their best troops on the ground to contend with apartheid, right? You know, I mean, let's appreciate how far the call to go back to Africa could really be. You dig? So we want to appreciate that. The following month, we're looking to do something to honor Imam Jamil El-Amin, formerly known as H. Rap Brown. I have to reconnect with his son so we can coordinate that. But we want to look at Malcolm's impact on SNCC, and we want to build around Sam Anderson, right? September to be Rosemary Mealy. I want everybody to get the book Memories of a Meeting, Malcolm Meets Fidel. The Cubans are hosting an event for her on the 19th, on the very day. We're going to do one on the secondary day, you know, with a different cast around it, with a different way to build our audience up around Cuba. We haven't come up with a date yet, but it'll probably be the last weekend in September. October, in addition to what we're trying to do for Imam Jamil, we want everybody to support the Black Panther Film Festival, because that's also another vehicle that us, along working with our Panther elders, we also continue to build support for our political prisoners. And I got the number, Akinyele, that you just sent me for Baba Oba, right? I'm going to reach out to him, and I'm trying to get a contact for Alice Wyndham, and I would love to feature them in November, you know, as we continue on. And, you know, we will probably be doing this, of course, until this COVID thing lifts, and it'll be at least probably until January, depending on what white man we're going to deal with in the White House. Y'all take that any way you want, but don't sit out the election, please. Right? So any final thoughts that each of you want to share? Raymond, you go first, because you started early. You go first.
Oh, sure. Please join the UNIA. This is the organization that Mr. Garvey established. He was able to recruit 12 million of our people, and we need to organize. No one's coming to our rescue. So while we're organizing, I've got an organization for you. The one that did so much. Our website is www.unia-aclgovernment.com. Again, www.unia-aclgovernment.com. And the last two things I have to inform you, in following Mr. Garvey's philosophy, we built what we call the ROC, the Restaurant Owners Corp. Yes. It has all of the dry goods.
Yes.
Fish, meats, produce, and vegetables and drinks you can imagine. It's 15,000 square feet. And guess what? We have no debt, no IOU, no loan. How did we do it? We followed the black print that Mr. Garvey established. We followed it to the T. How we built the Black Star Line Steamship Corporation? Well, he used $5 per share. And you have to keep in mind, black people in 1920 were making between 25 and 40 cents per day. If they were making 40 cents, the most they were making is $2 a week. But they found the $5. So the same place where we found the $5, we're asking our people to do it. Anyway, using the 5% cost of living adjustment, that $5 is $600. And we raised over 1.6 million. All of our people, we have no debt. And let me tell you, every time I walk in there, Brother Zaid and panel, I feel like I'm on top of the world. I said, we did it. Who could have believed? Whole bunch of black people would believe in each other, would trust each other, would love each other. And this is just the beginning. So again, my name is Raymond Dugue, and I'm at this service.
Raymond, I have a culinary background. That's the first thing that I heard about your chapter, right? And I said, well, I got to get in there sometime. That's, you know, I got to catch up with you on that too. But, you know, those of us who are Kwanzaa practitioners, I let folks know every day. And I said, that's why I stop with the children and get on the adults, right? Ujamaa should be one of our most important principles. And it's the principle that we're weakest on. And Kwanzaa is in its 50s, right? Black folks got to wake up, grow up, clean up, and stand up, as we say, right? And really get that together. That is cooperative economics.
Yes, sir.
Right? That is the African way, right? And it is the Haitian Revolution was won, not because just of their unity, because they fought it in an African way.
Yes, sir.
Right? So we have to remember that it's also about standing on the shoulders of our ancestors and our ancestors' ways to be the way forward. All right. So thank you for that, Brother Raymond. Right. Theresa, anything last you want to say about the true Maroon. We love our brother, you know. You got events coming up, right? Unmute yourself. You still muted. You're muted, Theresa. She just really.
My apologies. We just did a celebration of life. It's Earth Day, birthday on August 23rd. He is a August baby, and we're also doing a 5K run and walk and run, which is actually ABC. They're running down the annual Running Down the Walls, and which will be here in Philadelphia, September the 6th. And we are thinking of trying to get people to do it virtually, you know, walk in your area, do a 5K walk or run. And the fee for the Running Down the Walls this year is $40. Now, there are chapters throughout the country. We're the Philly Running Down the Walls, the ABC group, is going to hold theirs this year. I'm not sure. I don't think New York is going to do theirs this year because of the pandemic. But Philly ABC group, they're going to hold theirs. So we have collected monies. And the good thing about this Running Down the Walls is that it's $40 to register. You get a t-shirt. But bigger than that, 20 prisoners will receive $40 every month for an entire year. So it doesn't get no better than that, because some of our, and it is about the money, because some of the prisoners and political prisoners and folks who are in solitary confinement don't have family. Or if they have family, someone like Joseph Bowen, who has been in prison more than 30 years now. He took a stance inside of a prison, and a guard lost his life, and the warden. His family were just tortured in every way, in which they just cut ties with their brother, with Joseph Bowen. So he doesn't have any family. And so therefore, not only does this $40, when you join in to walk or run, even if you can't make it, it's going to benefit 20 other prisoners for an entire year. And on that note, in reference to Maroon, what he's going through, something you said earlier, Brother Zayed, is that I do believe there's some depression there. But bigger than that, we've kept his wheel spinning, because although he's pushing us away, and that's a part of that this illness he's dealing with. And not only that chemo, that medicine can be messing with his brain, okay? Because my dad usually is on point. He's very on point. Here we talking about a man that liberated himself 2 times.
That's right.
So it's no doubt about who he is. But we're dealing with people that won't deal in curing him with this chemo. This chemo could be killing him and altering his brain. So therefore, he's hanging in there because he got us. We got his back. He knows the supporters got his back. He knows that. Deep down in there, he knows. So he wouldn't have survived this long with stage 4 cancer, going on 16 months. And even with the deadly whatever they're giving him, he's the real deal. So we gotta fight to release him, because he's still here. He's still pulling through. He's still pulling through. So
everybody hold September 6th. I want everybody, we will be sharing all of this information on our Malcolm X Commemoration Committee Facebook page. We really appreciate our Facebook audience. It's a very international audience. We got folks from all over checking out, you know, the 411 on Malcolm, the 411 on Malcolm struggle that we do and we share with the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee Facebook page. So we would definitely have that on blast. And I wish I still had some knees. I would run, you know. I miss my legs badly, you know, and I could go into a long thing about that, but I won't. Akinyele, you can give us your last words and we can wrap up.
Well, I just appreciate you for allowing me to share on this platform again. Um, I'm whether I'm on or not, I'm a supporter of what you all do. Want to remind everybody about the concert tomorrow, which will be at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Just go to blackaugusthiphop.com, blackaugusthiphop.com tomorrow. And if you want to get more information on the Malcolm X grassroots movement, our website is Free the Land, MXGM.org, Free the Land, MXGM.org. Keep up the good work, Malcolm X Commemoration Committee and my comrade Baba Zaid. You got me. I'll be on every one of them programs you mentioned. I said, damn, I gotta listen to that one. I gotta,
Right.
I gotta be on that, man. So
Trip trying to keep track of all of them.
huh? No, I keep track. I'll follow you.
Yeah.
You give me the word.
Yeah.
And I'll spread the word to others also.
Right on. I want to shout out the other members of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. Michael Ferguson, basically our treasurer now, the son of Herbert Ferguson. He came in just when we needed him. And Michael has been solid and he's had my back because we're going through a transition too, trying to figure out how we're going to do since our chair has had some issues with her life. Sister Rich Tania Nzinga, a young poet in residence who helped revive poetry in a bold way. It was her and a young poet named Jessica Care Moore out of Detroit that brought poetry to the popular stage, to the grassroots stage by taking the Apollo Theater for poetry, not for song and dance, but for poetry. Brother Charles, who's also from Sons of Africa, and Sister Grace Birch, all of them have been at my back and helped me move this work in a very real way. Out of the elders, like I mentioned, Baba James and Sekou. Sekou was on our last panel, and I have to get back to Sekou because I know he wanted to figure out how to help us with this one. He texted me just last night. I didn't get a chance to get back to him. But Sekou, in his 70s, strong as ever, a man of a few words, but when he speaks, everybody listens, right? Because he too was one of the top soldiers amongst that generation of great warriors that we've had, and with them that are still here that we still have. So I want to shout all them out. Final thoughts. We got a lot coming up. I mentioned what we have coming up, but I mentioned also that we really need to look at this work and really trying to bring our forces closer together. We have a big Black Solidarity Day effort that we're trying to bring our reparations forces, to bring the question of reparations back to the forefront. It's in a place that it hasn't been, and we got to appreciate where that line comes from, right? Raymond, appreciate this, right? Queen Mother Moore, Beaugarviat out of Louisiana, is the mother of the reparations movement and is the queen mother of the new African independence movement, right? An elder who was in the streets trying to get into Malcolm's head before he even before he even went to prison. Oh yes, Queen Mother has touched a lot of our lives, right? And that's the mother of the movement of reparations. And our answer, under no circumstances can we let that question go, right? Some politicians can buck dance and play games with that as long as we let them, right? But under no circumstances can we let, in the name of our ancestors, can we let that go. Locally in New York, Charles Barron, straight out of the Black Panther Party, by the way, I must say, got the strongest reparations bill in the country, a reparations bill that calls for, what's the language? It's a reparative bill, laying out just what should happen, right? Not another study, because we always study, right? They've been studying us for decades, right? The intelligence departments of all the branches of the national security state of the United States government have buildings bigger than the Schomburg. They study us. So they know the answer to the question. They just need to figure out how much and what it's going to look like, right? And we should not be bystanders or waiting with our hands out in that question. We should be directing that discussion, demanding what it is that we need to liberate ourselves and to change our condition. And doing that in a Pan-African way, right? In a Pan-African way, not this Otto's, just me Negroes here foolishness. That is not how our oppression was international. Our liberation is going to be international. We're an African people, but we want the total liberation for all of our people for wherever we are. And so we are talking about reparations in that context, right? Not in no hand-me-down, pussyfooting, just me Negro kind of mess. We're not playing that game, right? So we love y'all. If you're following us on Facebook and you want to stay in touch with us, drop us your email in our inbox, right? So we can put you on our contact list, right? And you'll start getting things from us on a regular basis, right? So with that, we say thank you. We say free the land, say free all political prisoners, all power to the people, hold the flag high. We'll see you in the world.
Peace, Anniv. Peace, Raymond.
Before we depart, please repeat.
Go ahead, Brother Raymond. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Before we depart, please repeat after me. One God.
One God.
One God.
Right.
One aim.
One aim.
One aim.
One destiny.
One destiny.
One
Yes,
destiny.
sir. Yes,
And of
sir.
course, race first.
Yeah, race first. Yes, sir.
All the
Beloved.
Peace, everyone. Thank you.
Please, Sister Theresa. Good. to
Thank
see
you all.
Beautiful, everybody.
Thank you, Raymond.
Keep up
Thank
the
you.
good work.
I will. Thank you.
Hold 1 second. Let me tell you something while we're off the air.
Okay.
Something that could be, my brother passed from cancer in 2012, and it
Sorry to
was
hear that.
even before he had the chemo and radiation, because he had it late. He was seriously opposed to any of that, and I convinced him to have it late. But they said that the cancer itself was also affecting his thinking. He was at a later stage, but he had, this is what I'm not sure about. He had oral cancer, so it was affecting his teeth, and calcium was also affecting his thinking. And so that could be I don't know if that's, happening, but I'm just
It's
throwing it
the
out.
same here. It's the same on our
Yeah.
end because the cancer was spreading throughout Maroon's body and
Right.
it had reached his neck.
Right.
So yes, I've told him that it could be the chemo that's making him this different person that he is now.
Yeah. Well, we're praying for y'all and whatever we could do.
Okay. Thank
'Cause,
you.
He's a hero of mine. When his article that was in Kathleen's book,
Yes.
when they sent it to some of our students to edit, because she was working with Kathleen was here, and they couldn't understand it. I said, give it to me, and I was the one that edited it for them, because a lot there's in Geronimo pieces the students, some of the African names putting down a Coley or Sada Shakur, they didn't know. I said, give me that, let me do it. And I still used that piece he wrote on Maroons about the distinguishing between the fighting Maroons and the treaty Maroons.
Yes.
I use that example all the time now.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
I will definitely pass that on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to write it myself and pass it, so I do that.
Thank you. I'll send you the information because their mail goes to Florida, Pennsylvania